Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. So day 3, video 3, although it's almost midnight, but I'll still make it. 3 videos, 3 days. So as we were discussing before, the housekeeping rules of your American nursing. These are the things that you'll do on a day-to-day basis, regardless of the floor you're working on. So I did write a few things. You know me, I write it, I never look at it. So your housekeeping rules overall, so the stuff I spoke about in the video yesterday, where your orders, your flow sheet, the day-to-day stuff, the MAR for medication and all of that, the standard things that you do every time you go to work, be it night or day. So rule number 1 for your American nursing, you have to clock in and clock out. In England, we don't use a clocking in system. You just turn up on time and you get paid for 11.5 hours. Regardless of whether you're there for 12, 13, 14, it's free labor. But here, you clock in, you start getting paid. You clock out, you stop getting paid. So if you clock out 13, 14, 15 hours later, you get paid up until that point. During COVID and after, because they had increased everyone's pay, they were saying that in order to increase productivity and stop wasting time, you were to go home when your 12 hours was finished. And they were trying to say they were going to penalize people who stayed behind. It never worked because we stay behind all the time. When you're on a floor and you get 6 patients and you're taking report or giving report to 2 or 3 nurses, you've got to wait for them to take report from 2 others, wait on you, wait on somebody else. And sometimes that same nurse, when they're meant to be giving you report, they're doing some last minute task. So it's very difficult to leave the floor on time, to go home, go to lunch, do everything. So you get paid up until you clock out. Now, there are different ways to clock in and clock out. There is a timekeeping clock at the entrance of most floors, or they'll be located spread out around the hospital and different areas where people pass by frequently. You will use your hospital badge. Some of it comes with a barcode. You clock in and then your name comes up, the time you came in, and you click submit. Same thing when you're going home. You clock it, you clock out, you click submit, and that's when your shift ends. A few people have been known to clock out who don't want to get in trouble or want anyone to question why they were there so long after shift change. They clock out and then come and sit for an hour or so to finish up their work. I'm not going to be doing all that. If I'm staying behind, it's because I have something genuine that I didn't get to accomplish throughout the 12-hour shift. So you clock in, you clock out. You can also, some facility, you don't swipe. There is no barcode. You type in your employee ID. Once you put your employee ID on the clock, it gives you the opportunity to clock in. Some facility, because I've been doing travel nursing for the last 3 years, 2.5, 3 years, I've seen how they do it in some other facilities where you have to put your employee ID, your name comes up, and you put where you're working, because depending on where you work, you get a different pay. For me, I wasn't contracted to go to the intensive care. I was in step down care, but whenever I went to a higher level or a lower level, I had to clock into that floor so that they know that they would pay me my same rate regardless of where I went. For you as a permanent staff, some places, if you go to the emergency department, you get a different rate. So it's important when you clock in to know what to put, and you will learn all that during your orientation. So that's housekeeping rule number 1. Housekeeping rule number 2, if you're gonna call out, all these terms I've learned since I came here. Calling out mean that you're gonna call up sick, cancel, whatever you want to call it. But you said, oh, you've done a call out. If you're going to call out, you have to call 2 hours prior to your shift starting. So let's say you started work at 7, which most people do. You would have to call in from 5 o'clock. Out of courtesy, sometimes I've called out, guilty. Sometimes I'm just fed up, not sick. You can call out. I usually know from about midday, so that gives them the opportunity to find a staff member to cover for your shift. So you call out 2 hours prior. When you call out, you don't get paid. That's me who works for an agency. If you're working a contract with a travel agency, when you don't work, you don't get paid. If you work for the hospital, you're using your PTO, so your paid time off. This is one of the downsides about here that I don't like. Your paid time off is for everything. You're sick and also your holiday. So if you have the hours, because every time you clock in and you get hours, for every pay period you get hours. You're paid every 2 weeks, and every 2 weeks at one job I used to get 3 hours. So for every 2 weeks that would be 6 hours. So that means every month that's 12 hours. So that would be 1 day a month. So if you worked, but you had some hours that you could carry over. So those are the hours that's in the bank with your name. So when you call out, 12 of that hour will go to pay you. So if you work for a facility, they don't even ask. The first time it happened to me, I was like, I didn't want pay. I wanted it to stay as my holiday, but you're using your holiday time as well. So if you call out sick, don't come to work for 2 times. That's 24 hours of your annual leave you've used. That's 2 days. There's no difference between sick pay and holiday. So if you're off, once you're not in the building and you didn't turn up, they automatically pay you 12. If you're off for 3, that's 36 hours. A few people that I've met, they have a lot of hours in the bank because they've never taken any holiday. They're at work all the time. They're just accumulating hours. And you get like a floating holiday. I'll soon tell you what floating is, but you get 1 day back, or 6 hours some places for floating. What some people do who have the time, they'll just call out for 3 shifts. So that's 36 hours. They'll still get paid as if they were at work, but it's their own hours that they're using if you can afford it. But if you only had 6 days and you've used 3 on sick, being home for 1 week, that's only 1 week you have left. But once you come back to work, when you work and you clock in, clock out for the week, you get 3. So you're constantly accumulating. It's not really fixed. So, and when you do overtime, you also get extra hours. You get a 2-3 hours here or there. So the more you work, the more time you accumulate in most places. So that's for your calling out and your PTO. A few hospitals, although some of them are trying to move, I'm talking for the state I'm in, and I've spoken to people in different states. Some of them have different PTO, paid time off, that's your holiday, different from sick pay. When you're getting a job, they will tell you if they're designated sick days, time, and if it's mixed in with your PTO time. Float, which I mentioned before. Float is exactly as it is. When you work for a facility, you're expected to float to other areas that's within your skill set. What I mean by skill set is if you're not an intensive care nurse, you won't be floated there. And if you float, you'll be something called helping hands, meaning they'll use you as a healthcare assistant, a patient care tech. You won't do anything technical, but everyone is expected to float. So let's say you went to work. I was on med-surg when I just came, and we had low census, but they still brought us in because another floor had three nurses that called out. As they say, don't forget what called out mean. They've called out sick. If the floor was short and my floor was okay, they would pull me and said, oh, you're floating to another floor. Float just means that your shift will be spent in your same hospital, but on another floor. If it was outside of your skill set, you would be helping hands. And everyone's expected to do that. On my floor, we had a float book. So you would float in order of who was at work. So let's say I floated yesterday and I'm back at work today. I wouldn't float again today. It would be the next person, and they'll put your name, who last floated. They'll just check the dates beside your name. And if three of you were there and a floor needed a nurse and you had the extra nurse, they would just look and said, oh, Omega, you floated 3 months ago. It's your turn and you'd have to go. It is the expectation and you cannot refuse to float. When you come here with a nursing agency, they float you sometimes a lot, because in your contract, depending on who you sign a contract with, that is why it's important that you read it. I have to be paid. Even if the hospital cancel me and I don't work, they have to pay me, and it's not from my PTO. They are the ones that didn't have work for me, so they have to pay. Make sure you get a contract like that, and that is why I love O'Grady Payton, because the hospital couldn't cancel me. Hence, canceling and floating, so they have to float you. If they don't need you, they'll bring you in to do whatever, be helping hands, because they know that they still have to pay you. So they're not gonna keep you at home without you getting paid. You have to float to another floor. Also, when you're doing travel nursing, which I will speak about somewhere down the line, a few people have been reaching out, being interested in that, so we'll get to that. But when you, as a traveler, your contract as well will say for the 14 weeks they're allowed to cancel you once or not at all. So the hospital will never cancel you. You'll come and you float to another floor. Sometimes it's not an area that you like. Typically, intensive care nurses don't like to float to the floor, because in intensive care you get 1, 2, maximum 3 patients, and 3 is only after COVID and very unheard of. It's usually 2 in intensive care. So you find that nurses who work in intensive care or work in a progressive care, step down area, they can't handle 6 patients. And sometimes when they're floated to spillover or overflow units where you have 6 and 7 and chaos, they cannot handle it. So some nurses hate to float. For me, I used it as an opportunity to learn what else was going on outside of the floor, because you know, when you travel from England and you come here, you're thinking about your long-term goals. Do I want to stay on this floor? Would I like to see something else that's going on? So I use it as an opportunity. When I went to the other floor, I said, hey, what's this specialty? How does it work? Blah, blah, blah. And then also you look at the condition and you learn a bit of politics. So it was a learning opportunity for me. It didn't matter the work. The ground rules were still the same. But I find that lots of nurses here do not like to float outside their comfort zone, especially if they're nurses who've been permanent on a floor, and then the floor they're going to is a bit more difficult, or they deemed it not as nice as their floor. They don't like to float. But floating will be part of your life, especially for the 2 years or 3 years for which you sign that contract, because chances are your agency will ensure that the hospital is unable to cancel you because they have to pay you. That will be a clause. So they will bring you in to do whatever. That's one of the rules. So you've learned float, clocking in, clock out, calling out. Okay. Also, when hospital census is low, that has never happened to me in England. Never. Your hospital does not cancel you in the UK. You have actually gone into work and fold linen, mop, done all sorts in England, but have never been cancelled. Here in the United States, when census is low, they call you, and for an agency, they'll cancel you. Even as a travel agency, they'll cancel you. So there are different types of contracts. Sometimes the hospital have their own contract, which are internal contract. They're allowed to cancel you without any pay, without nothing. As a regular nurse on the floor, they'll cancel you or put you on call. And they only cancel you in 4 hour increment. So you go to work 7, 8, so 8, 9, 10, 11. So they'll cancel you from 7 till 11. That's 4 hours. Or they'll tell you you're on call for 4 hours. If you are on call for 4 hours, it means that they can call you in at 11. So let's say they call and they say, oh, Omega, don't come in today, where census is low. But they do keep you at home just in case the emergency department gets busy or they get transferred. Then they bring you in. They only staff according to bed numbers, which I find ridiculous. But I guess it saves money, and that's why they're able to pay you a bit more. So there's no nurse there wasting time. You're there doing something. When they put you on call, you don't get your regular pay rate. You get a lower rate. So you're on call for 4 hours. It gets to 11 o'clock and they don't need you. They cancel you for another 4. So that's 12, 1, 2, 3 a.m. Do you know that they can call you in your house at 3 a.m. to come to work? Yes. If you do not come, it's a disciplinary. It's something here they call a write-up. You're written up. If you get 2 write-up, it's a formal warning. If you get a 3rd, it's an official, and sometimes they can sack you, fire you from your job for a write-up. No nurse wants to be written up. So if you're at home, and they said, oh, we don't need you for these 4 hours. Oh, we don't need you for the next 4 at 3 a.m. So it's like they want you to be up, dressed, and ready. Do you know what the disgusting thing is? Sometimes they don't even call you back. Me, whenever they cancel me for the 4, I just go to my bed. Someone once told me that if you don't want to go in, when they call you the second 4 hours, you just said, oh, I'm really sorry. Do you know I was here and I had some alcoholic drink? Just say that, and then they'll be like, you should have known better. You can't come in. Anyway, so yes, they cancel you in 4 hour increment. And if you're on call, you'll get a little bit, but they'll pay you on call for 4 hours. And then if they don't need you 11 o'clock, then they'll call and say you're canceled. From 11 o'clock until 7, they'll use PTO hours to pay you. If you're on an internal contract at an hospital, like I am now, you don't get any pay when they cancel you. Equally, the other housekeeping rule to know is that you could be at home, could be at work, and then they send you home after you've worked for 4 hours. Sorry, my leg's cramping. So after working for 4 hours, they can send you home, saying, oh, census is low. I've had a patient pass away and census was low, and so they send me home. I'm thinking, wow. Anytime, 2 a.m. in the morning, I've been sent home during a thunderstorm, all kinds. So don't really care about that. As long as you were scheduled to work that day, all bets are off. You have to come in. Also, another thing they'll do, they'll reach out and said, oh, we have extra shift. Do you want to come in? When you go in to help your colleague on the floor, they'll float you to another floor. And I told them, I said, that is ridiculous. If I'm coming to work on my floor to help my colleagues, I don't expect to be sent around the hospital. And I've always told them, I said, anytime I come to work and I'm not required on my floor, when it's an extra shift I pick up, I will go home. I've told them several times. So those are some of the ground rules to keep in the back of your mind, that these are the things that happen in American hospitals. But I want you to keep an open mind. And for me, I've nursed in terrible places in England. But since I've been here, I find that nothing was too difficult. There was never a situation I couldn't navigate because I have been prepared well. My training and some of the hellholes I've worked in England have prepared me well. So it's not really a problem for me. You have to be adaptable and you can't let certain things mess with your state of mind. You have to know what you go to work for, what you want to achieve out of moving here, the bigger picture, the bigger goal for you, and what you want to do. So I went over float, PTO, and sick pay. Other ground rules now. So you're on the floor. You've taken report for all your patients. Once you've taken report for your patient, you have to do it bedside. So they call it bedside shift report. Once you do your bedside shift report, so if you're taking 6 patients, you go from room to room to room. The nurse brings you, introduce you to the patient, and then you have to fill in the whiteboard that's on the wall. It's a rule. You have to fill in that whiteboard. So the nurse will bring you in. There'll be visitors in the room. The nurse will say, oh, I've brought Omega. She's going to be your nurse from 7 till 7. Introduce myself to the patient. We'll ask if we can give report to whoever is there. Once you've given the report, you've taken over that patient, you move to the next room, and so forth. Then you have to take up your cell phone. It's usually an iMobile, they call it, but it's an iPhone. And once you log in, your name comes up and everybody in the building can see you. The pharmacist, radiology, the hospitalist, the nurse in charge. Once they put your name in, sometimes there's no name. It's just your number. The number is assigned to you. You put it into Epic, and those 2 patients are 6 patients. Your name comes up beside them. So anything to do with the patient for the 12 hours, you're the point of contact. I believe I've gone over my 20 minutes, which I said is my max. So we'll take this up in my video tomorrow. So 3 for 3. Tomorrow it will be 4. So don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And I hope this gives some insight to people who are wondering what goes on in American nursing, the things that they don't tell you. Stay tuned. I'll see you tomorrow. Bye, guys.